This video needs no introduction, but I guess I'll make this the introduction. Oh. It's Drewski McGillicuddy's Dawn of the Dead movie review. Hey everybody, it's Drewski McGillicuddy, and guess what? I just watched one of my favorite movies of all time, Dawn of the Dead, 1978. First, there was Night of the Living Dead, and then 10 years later, there was Dawn of the Dead. And this franchise kind of reminds me of the Terminator, because Night of the Living Dead is a lot like the Terminator, whereas it started its own thing, and then Dawn of the Dead is like Terminator 2, where it expanded upon that thing that the first started. And then the third one wasn't as good as the first one, but wasn't as good as the second one, but was still pretty decent. And then, you know, I'd like to just, you know, forget about most of the ones after that. Like, you know, never mind. Don't worry about that. Anyway, we're going to talk about Dawn of the Dead. And some of you might not have seen this movie, and that's really sad, because this movie is amazing, and this is another movie that probably best viewed in your younger years. Even though, like, the first time I watched this movie, it didn't hit me right away. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, this is cheesy. The zombies are blue and gray, and that's red paint. That's not blood. Who did these special effects? Come to find out, it's the master of special effects, Tom Savini, and he's even in the movie. He plays a little small part towards the end. Maybe we'll get into that. Maybe we won't. I don't know. I don't know where I want to go with this. I was gonna write notes, but then I figured, you know, it won't come out as natural if I sit here and write stuff down. So let's start off at the beginning. You know, I used to think that this movie kind of took place directly after Night of the Living Dead, but if you listen closely, it's about 7 to 10 days afterwards, because there's a point in the movie where Peter's talking about he's seen half a dozen guys bitten by the dead, and they didn't last more than 3 days. But it seems like people are still, they're not aware of the situation. I don't know. It's hard to pinpoint. It's kind of hard to pinpoint. But I'd like to think it takes place at least a week to 10 days after the events of Night of the Living Dead. So we start out in a news station, and we meet Fran. And Fran, I guess, she works at the news station, obviously, and she finds out that they're putting out rescue stations that are no longer in order. So she wants those taken down. In the meantime, there is a talk show going on discussing the situation at hand, and there's a guy screaming about how dead bodies need to be destroyed on sight. They're not your friends, they're not your family. And, you know, the guy that's interviewing him, you know, he's not ready to, you know, give up on, I guess, society or whatever, but you know, the dead are coming to life and attacking the living. You can't have sympathy for these people, which is weird, because later on in the movie, there's a scene where you kind of do sympathize with the zombies a little bit. But maybe we'll talk about that later. If not, you know, I brought it up now. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So then you meet Steven, and Steven comes in and he tells Fran, meet him on the roof at 8 or 9 o'clock, because they're getting out of here. And she said, we can't just leave. And he said, well, somebody's got to survive. Might as well be us. I got the keys to the helicopter. What up? So then we cut to, the guy tells her, go ahead, we're going to be off the air by then anyway. And then we cut back to the interview, and the guy says that there is a martial law in state. And then it cuts immediately over to a project, and the military and the police are trying to get in and I guess get all the dead bodies that people are keeping locked up in the basement of this building. And one of the cops ends up going on a rampage, but this is where you meet the Roger character, and he's in Woolie's unit, and Woolie goes a little ape shit. And I love this right here, if I can show it, because sometimes if I don't know if I'm going to be able to show a lot of stuff because of the fact that my my editor app, like certain video clips, it'll only let me show a certain amount and then it won't. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about the movie. So then you meet Ken Foree's character, the only actor I can remember the name at any given moment, because you know he's been in a lot more than just Dawn of the Dead. But that's Peter, and Peter tells Roger to step away from Wooly, and then he shoots him in the back because the motherfucker lost his mind. Not to spoil anything. I mean, I know there's a couple of you that haven't seen this movie, but you know, I won't get into like major spoilers. So anyway, before he even kicks the room open, there's a guy that tells him not to open that door because that's where some of the dead are. And then it leads to another back and forth. Guy can't get his gun loaded, and he's getting cornered by a zombie. He decides that he's just going to take his own life, and that takes a lot out of Roger, because that's the second person he's seen get shot in the head. I forgot to mention the other one, but I don't want to sit here and tell you the entire movie. But we're going to go ahead and move downstairs to where he goes to catch some air, catch his breath. And then that's where he meets Peter. And at first you think, you know, they're going to battle because Roger was in Wooly's unit, so Peter thinks Roger is going to rat him out, even though who cares what happened. You know, the guy deserved what he got. So then we meet this, I want to say, I don't know where he seems like a Haitian, but he's a priest, got one leg, and it leads to one of the best quotes of the movie.
When the dead walk, senores, we must stop the killing, or we lose the war.
That's the other thing about this movie. It's endlessly quotable. So, Brian Roby, there's an answer to your fucking question. This movie's endlessly quotable. I'm sure Texas Chainsaw Massacre is great and all, but there's not really that many lines that are quotable like Dawn of the Dead. There's also not as much character development, and that's what's great about this movie. Now, sure, Night of the Living Dead had its character development, but this is one of those movies where you root for everybody. Like, every single character in this movie, except for maybe some of the filler characters at the beginning of the movie. But yeah, our main cast. I'm talking about our main cast, okay? You got Steven, you got Fran, you got Peter, and you got Roger. All four characters. I mean, Steven at first was a little bit annoying because he was a bit of a buffoon. There's a scene early on, because yeah, they all meet up, and then they get on the helicopter and they're flying around and they're flying around. They stop to get gas, which leads to a disturbing part. Very upsetting scene where Peter stumbles upon some child zombies, and it's pretty sad if you ask me. But yeah, there's a scene, the most iconic zombie in the movie, the plaid shirt zombie, which is on all of the everything. And Steven goes to take a shot, and he don't know how to fire a gun, and he almost kills Peter. So him and Peter have a back and forth where Peter walks back up on him with his gun and says, "Don't you ever point a gun at anyone, mister." And Fran thinks he's going to shoot him. But anyway, so we're back in the helicopter. We're flying along. Steven's falling asleep. They got to wake him up, give him some water, splash on his face. But then, you know, eventually we come across the mall where we will spend the remainder of the movie. And at first, Steven doesn't think it's a good idea because, you know, it's surrounded by the dead. And they're all inside the mall. So they're like, well, they're spread out. They can't get up here. We might as well check it out. So they go ahead and check it out. And sure enough, wouldn't you know it, they got cases and cases of Spam. Which, Fran don't want no Spam. But she don't have no can opener. So she gonna have to eat some Spam. Now, after I saw this movie, well, like I said, the first time I saw it, it didn't hit me. But then the second time I saw it, that's when it became, you know, one of my all-time favorites. And I kind of grew an obsession with Spam. Now, I'd always liked Spam as a kid, but this movie brought it back out. It, like, you know, died, but then it got brought back out. But anyway, that's enough about Spam. Let's talk about the movie. So, they're sitting there eating their Spam, and Roger and Peter think, well, you know what? There's a lot of stuff that we could use down there, so let's go take a look. Steven's passed out like a baby sleeping, and Fran thinks they're crazy, and they tell Fran, just leave him sleep. We'll be right back. Here's a gun, just in case anything happens. And they go down and, you know, they're playing hit and run, gathering up equipment that they could use, and then Steven's dumbass wakes up and takes Fran's gun, and it leads to some suspenseful scenes later, you know, but yeah. So pretty much it's the starting point of them taking the mall from the zombies, because they slowly figure out what to do. There's a scene with the trucks where they decide to use these trucks to block the doors, and then that leads to, I'm not going to tell you, but a character gets, I'm not going to tell you who, a character gets bit, and then they only have a couple days left to help get the mall ready for, you know, turning it into an apartment, because that's what they pretty much do. They turn this storage room upstairs that they find, like when they first get into the mall, there's a storage room, and they, over time, it starts to look like an actual apartment. They got like the fancy modern 70s furniture, like there's some clear chairs. What am I talking about the furniture for? Anyway, so yeah, I don't know where else to go with this. I mean, the character development's amazing. The music score, even the cheesy ass 70s mall music, is better than that bullshit Taylor Swift crap they play in malls nowadays. But yeah, the gonk. I mean, that's the that's reason in itself to watch this movie, just so you can hear the gonk. That's probably what I'm going to be playing in the background. So if that's the music playing in the background, that's what this is. That's the gonk. Some of you might be familiar with it. Anyway, the music. Yeah, like I said, and this does, to bring me back to my Terminator point. Night of the Living Dead is the Terminator. This is Terminator 2. It expands the story. We have more zombies. We have a bigger body count. We have a bigger budget. Like everything's bigger and better in this movie. Sure, it's got red paint for blood, but you know that's kind of part of its charm. Like Lee said he's gonna start watching some more classics again. And Lee, if you haven't seen this one in a long time, you should watch this right after
Night of the Living Dead,
and then possibly watch Day of the Dead, and then possibly watch Land of the Dead, and then possibly watch Diary of the Dead, and then possibly watch Survival of the Dead, and then maybe do a ranking of the Dead movies. Cody Leach, you know you want to do it too. I mean, eventually I'm going to copy off of you guys and do my Friday the 13th, my Nightmare on Elm Streets, my Halloweens, but I figured I'd start off with my bread and butter. The Dead movies are my bread and butter. Of course, after Land was kind of lackluster at first, but it grew on me over the years. I could take or leave Diary and Survival because it's so far off. I mean, it's been so long since I've watched them, but I'm going to revisit them in this journey of George Romero's Dead movies. I could almost cheat and throw Creepshow in with this because the first Creepshow's got a bit of a zombie story to it. But anyway, this movie is amazing. It's got some like pretty heart-wrenching scenes once the character that was bitten does succumb to his wounds, or her wounds. I don't want to give it away in case you haven't seen it. Like I said, like I keep saying, but that scene, it might tear you up a little bit. But before that happens, they do have some fun once they get the mall cleaned up, freed of zombies. This mall's got everything. It's got a bank. It's got a pharmacy with morphine. It's got a grocery store. It's got a hardware store, clothing store, electronics store, a gun store. It's got an arcade with F1 racing that looks amazing. I would love to play that. And it's got that little cowboy game that used to be on Atari. But this, yeah. Anyway, So yeah, and like I said, another reason I think this only takes place a week afterwards is because there's some stuff in the grocery stores that they're eating, and it's like if this would have been a month later or however long, this stuff would be spoiled. But it's like how long can this stuff last? And then you realize they got some meat frozen in the freezer, so that's cool. But then they put the zombies in there with the fresh meat. It's like there's 2 freezers. Why didn't you just put all the meat in one freezer and then put all the zombies in the other freezer? Or I don't know, put them somewhere at the far end of the mall. I don't think it'd take up the whole, I don't think the smell would take up the whole mall. Anyway, I don't want to sit here and talk for like 30 minutes about this movie, even though I could. I could literally talk about this movie for the rest of my life. Let's go ahead and grade it. I couldn't come up with a number, so we're gonna take a page from Drum Dums, and I'm gonna give it the purple unicorn that Drum Dums is always talking about, because this movie is perfect in every way, even with the cheesy 70s aesthetic that's going on with it. It's still a timeless masterpiece. If you haven't seen Dawn of the Dead, it's free on YouTube. Like, who gives a fuck if it's not full HD? It's kind of like, you know, watching it for the first time in the 90s or something, like I did on VHS. Like, for fuck's sakes, just watch it on YouTube if you haven't seen it. Like, once you see it and you realize how fucking amazing it is, maybe you'll go out and buy it on Blu-ray, even though the Blu-rays are getting outrageously overpriced. And, you know, some of them might not play in your fucking American Blu-ray player. But, you know, I'm eventually going to get a region free so that I can watch stuff. But the fucked up thing is, real quick, and then we'll get the fuck out of here. This Arrow release has 1 Blu-ray copy, and the rest are on DVD, which the DVDs will not play. The theatrical cut plays in my Blu-ray player. Alright? And then this is a Japanese version. It looks regular, but if you look at the back of it, it's all Japanese. And this down here is in Japanese, too. But this copy, the American actual copy, goes for like $50. And then this Blu-ray right here, like, this is a DVD, but the Blu-ray of this goes for like $30. It's getting ridiculous. This is still $50. I paid $40 for this. Now it goes for $50. And the worst part about this is, we took the goddamn thing to the fucking theater. I got drunk and lost my goddamn unrated extended cut. Because I had went to take a picture for Killer Flicks a couple months back and realized it wasn't in there. And I don't know what to do. I guess I'll have to buy it again. Oh well, you know, it's $50, you know. It's not like I need a laptop. I'll just keep using this piece of shit phone. Anyway, like the video. I hope this helps in making you want to watch this movie, because this is one of the most important movies in film history. As a matter of fact, when I was in my senior year, I convinced my English teacher to let us watch this movie in class. And everybody got a permission slip signed. We all watched Dawn of the Dead one day, because it was towards the end of our senior year, and there wasn't really much learning left to do. So we spent 2 hours watching the director's cut of Dawn of the Dead, and everybody loved it. We all loved it. So you'll love it too, I hope. Because if not, I mean, there's something wrong with you, honestly. Like the video, and, you know, we'll see you next time.